At 14 minutes after 7, thank you for joining us this morning. This is Morning Express, and well, I'll start first of all by introducing the panel that we have here this morning to just review the week that has been. And to my extreme left, I have Dr. Alutalala Muhwana. Thank you for joining us, sir, this morning. We also have Honorable Jeremiah Kioni joining us, and last but not least, Professor Oeri Tumbo, who is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us, sir. And let me first of all also take this opportunity to thank you for joining us on a day where everybody would love to have a little bit more sleep, especially being a holiday. And for Morning Express, you are our shujas today. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And well, NASA kicks off this week with countrywide demos that turned violent and bloody in some parts of the country as police repulsed protesters. The leaders later called off demos before announcing the mother of all demos to take place on the 26th of October, insisting that there will be no elections. Let's listen to what took place over the week.
The push for electoral changes at the IEBC was once again renewed this week as National Super Alliance supporters took to the streets in protest. The Monday protests, however, turned tragic in Kisumu as an 18-year-old student was shot dead. A 2-year-old also suffered a bullet wound on the shoulder while playing outside her house. Kisumu County Police Commander Titus Zioma denied that police shot at protesters and ordered investigations into the killing of the Vihiga High School student.
Nilipokuwa kule upande wa Kondele, kuna kijana alikuwa ameenda kununua ice. Kisha mapolisi wakakuja wakamshoot kutokea huku nyuma. Huyo kijana hakuwa na hatia yote, walikuwa kwa peaceful demonstration. Kisha hao mapolisi wakakuja wakamshoot from the behind. Akashukia tu bunduki imetoka nyuma. Kisha akauawa hapo.
A death that drew condemnation from NASA leaders who accused the police of using excessive force against demonstrators.
Political crisis that the country has cannot be solved through the gun and will not be solved by the use of brutal force.
Following the chaotic scenes witnessed Monday this week, NASA principal Raila Odinga suspended the week-long demonstrations in honor of those who had lost their lives. In line with this, the opposition will not take part in the Mashujaa Day celebrations and will instead hold rallies in honor of the departed souls.
The judiciary has struck a blow for constitutionality and the rule of law in this country, reminding those in power today that their minions like Matiang'i, that the Kenyan people are free people with rights that cannot be taken away at their whims.
The coalition, whose demands for electoral change at the IEBC have not been met, has remained adamant that it will not participate in the 26th October exercise, with this message taking center stage at their various rallies this week.
Tunasema Oktoba.
Tarehe 26 itakuwa ndio maandamano kubwa zaidi katika Kenya mzima.
The coalition leadership is expected to issue direction on the way forward regarding the demonstrations. Janet Chapia, KTN News.
Now, this week, the practicability of having a credible election on the 26th of October moved from probable to almost unlikely. In a week that kicks off with at least 6 petitions in court whose determination would definitely affect the week's repeat polls. By midweek, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission had already lost one of its reliable commissioners, throwing the country into another spin of confusion. Ken Aseka takes a closer look.
IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati sought the Supreme Court's interpretation of his role in results verification. The country's highest court had its verdict, and it was another legal battle among many that the electoral agency was losing. The Apex Court denying Chebukati results editing rights on Forms 34A and 34B. According to the judgment, results at the constituency level remain final and in read-only mode.
First and the second respondents cannot correct errors identified in Forms 34B or amend the Forms 34B where the same differ with the results contained in the relevant Forms 34A.
On Wednesday, the country woke up to news that IEBC Commissioner Dr. Rosalina Kombe had quit the commission, dropping a bombshell that further dented the country's hope of conducting a free, fair and credible election and at least end the current stalemate, a stalemate which every Kenyan is now feeling its effects.
I had gotten to a point whereby I felt that I had no more contribution to make because I only had one vote. And the more we continue voting on issues that are fundamental, the more I realize that as long as Chairman Chebukati continues to have only 2 votes, we cannot make progress in the commission. We cannot guarantee a credible process come the 26th of October.
Dr. Kombe resigned, describing the working conditions at Anniversary Towers as unconducive. The former commissioner revealing just how the electoral body was sharply divided and partisan. Kombe could no longer perform her duties and was not to be part of what she described as a mockery.
What I'm asking myself is that we are ready to go into an election, even if it's going to cost the lives of our staff and voters.
Before long, the national returning officer, the man on the hot seat, Wafula Chebukati, emerged, but this time round with a yellow card.
As a referee, I want to issue a stern warning to the players of this game on all sides that they should stop all attempts to interfere with the process. The failure to do this will result in consequences, as I've made up my mind to uphold the Constitution and the will of the people of Kenya, regardless of threats, intimidation and pressure.
Chebukati, whose efforts to have President Uhuru Kenyatta and his competitor Raila Odinga engage in talks have failed, had had enough of Jubilee and NASA's backdoor schemes to manipulate his work. Without his signature smile, Chebukati sent a message of her chair, who may as well just quit should the situation persist.
I would rather bow out with my name intact and my head lifted high than be part of a process where personal interests drive the interest of the nation.
Still, the commission grapples with disrupted training of its staff across Nyanza, with leaders from the region calling on their supporters not to take part in the elections. And as we enter home stretch, the focus remains on IEBC and its chair, Wafula Chebukati, the man of the moment, as he gives direction on Monday on whether the October 26th elections will go on. Kenaseka, KTN News.
All right, so it's been a rather turbulent and eventful week with things changing almost by the hour or by the day at least. And at this point in time, just to remind you, you're welcome to participate in this conversation. The hashtag is Morning Express KTN. You can also tweet, and that's at KTN News, or you can tweet me directly. That's at Michael G. Gitonga. As we continue with the discussion in studio of what has happened over the week. And gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us this morning. But I'd also request that we look at this as Kenyans, not necessarily from the prism of political parties, but as Kenyans, especially today being Mashujaa Day. Our country is at a place where we have heroes who fought for this country, for the freedom of this country, but it looks like that could be eluding us, or it could just be a process that we're going through that gives us a better country tomorrow. It could be a process of democracy, so maybe we look at that. So let me start with you, Dr. Alutalala, on where we are today and possibly your thoughts, especially in light of, well, we started the week, first of all, with NASA announcing protests. Then they called them off in respect or in, celebrating those who, or remembering, let me say commemorating those who possibly lost their lives during the protests that have been there. But being called off at some point, then now we have them now saying that on the 26th, which is meant to be the date for the elections, that the mother of all strikes is going to be done. Your thoughts on where we are?
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for inviting us. Personally, Michael, I'm a very worried man. Because if you look at the wording of Honorable Raila's statement, and as I've said in previous shows, that Raila did not withdraw from the election. He actually boycotted the election. And when you see now, when he says we are suspending demonstrations now to go and condole with those who died, but come 26th, we will have the mother of all demonstrations. The implication is that in his strongholds, he'll make everything possible to ensure that the elections don't go on. And that's a very scary situation.
Now, in regards to, he has his own reasons as to why he feels the elections will not be free and fair. But do you think that is now again going too far? Because there are those who still want to go ahead and vote. And as per the IEBC, as the only arbiter given constitutionally to take us through the election, they have gazetted 26th as the date for the election.
Yes, he has his grievances, and this we have talked on this show a couple of times. And as I always say, politicians have a way of directing the public psyche to concentrate on one idea or one topic which they want. You see, when this situation began on the 1st of September, the problem was that the decision of the Supreme Court was accepted by one side and the other side did not accept. Fast forward, as we proceed further, now what we are only discussing is 26th of October. Man, the court said we must hold elections by 26th of October. But that's not the only ruling that they made. There were other provisions of that order which we ought to have looked at. All those have been pushed under the carpet. What you're now looking at is October 26th. There is a standoff. I have said that you cannot rubbish what Raila is claiming because he is actually asking that what the court ruled be implemented. Never mind the wording of his demands. He calls them irreducible minimums. That, of course, is coined in political grandstanding, which is not so good. But what he's asking that be done is, can we have the decision of Maraga Court implemented in totality? We are implementing the last limb of that order, which is October 26th. And that's what everybody's not talking about. But what exactly did Maraga say? Have we complied? My answer is no. And therefore, as he proceeds, this is a great standoff that will not be resolved by 26th. I have said, Michael, October 26th election will not resolve this problem.
All right. Let me hear from Professor your thoughts on where we are today.
Michael, thank you for having me on the show. First and foremost, I wish we could be celebrating Mashujaa Day. We are not celebrating, we are quarreling.
You're right.
We are quarreling. I mean...
And this quarrel is not likely to end even today after Mashujaa
Yes,
Day, unfortunately.
I think that's the tragedy about it. Second, I would like to say that one of the problems we have at the moment politically is that each of the two sides is stating its position so vigorously. However skewed the statement is. In other words, NASA is stating its case in a way that makes it permanently aggrieved, all right? And the Jubilee is stating its case as permanently right, all right? So the little things that allow you to tie the knots, cross the T's and dot the I's, and to make whatever each is demanding comprehensively legitimate, those are being ignored. From a point of view of national interest, the truth is the ordinary citizen actually doesn't seem to understand what's going on. I have talked to people in the city, I've talked to people up country. What they have got is the skeleton. They have been told we are right here, so and so is wrong here, on both sides.
On both sides.
My worry is, what makes it impossible, and I think this is the actual critical point, for the two to discuss their differences in the national interest.
And by the two now, you mean Raila and Uhuru?
And Uhuru. What makes it impossible for them to discuss? Now, my hypothesis is that either both of them are individually wrong in pursuit of what they are chasing, or both of them are completely lost. There is no possibility that
so
they
it's
are
either wrong or lost.
Or lost. They are not. They can't be right.
That's an interesting scenario.
They can't be right. They can't be right. Is because if they are right, the only thing that is right is to obey the Constitution and obey the court orders in their entirety. That's what is right.
Okay.
So once none of them is addressing these aspects comprehensively, there is nothing about being right. What you have got here is self-righteousness, which is not necessarily legitimate and is not necessarily legal.
All right.
You know, let me finish, Mike. We have a problem whereby in this country, every time you need political discipline, you need political courage to solve the problem, what happens is we resort either to legalistic references or to ethnic support. So really the desire, in my view, to solve the problem in the by national interest, here I mean the common good on both sides.
All right. Honorable Kioni, your thoughts on where we are and the fact that it looks like both sides are not willing to sit down, yet the issue we have here may not necessarily just be legal, but I think is largely political.
Thank you for having me on this show. And today is a special day for me, and I know to many Kenyans. I am a son of a Mau Mau. My father was detained twice. My mother was part of the Mau Mau movement. So when you talk of Shujas, I know we have Shujas in this country. We have a few members of the Mau Mau movement who are still alive and who needs attention still. We thank the government that they have this funds transfer, because that team of Mau Mau is now captured by the 70+ years, and they are likely to benefit from that funds transfer. And even as we go through the paces that we are having, I think it is important that we don't lose sight for that. And even as I was driving to this place, I was asking myself, that which took my father to detention twice, that which kept my mother doing the things they had to do to keep the Mau Mau movement going, is it something that we are celebrating today, or is it something that we are playing around with? And I want to say this. And we have a constitution that we enacted 2010, and I was part of it because I was among the 27 members of parliament who sat in Naivasha. And even as we were enacting it, that spirit of fighting for the independence of this country kept going through me, and it is still doing the same thing today. One of the things that we must ask ourselves, what we are doing, is it helping this country to move together? Is it helping this country to remain as a country, or to make it fall into pieces? And even as a member of 12th Parliament today, any minute I sit to make or enact laws, I would enact laws that help the country to move on as a country. And that is a question I always ask myself. We now are in a situation where we have elections on the 26th. And these elections have been, and it's a story that we all know. We are there because the court directed that we get this done by that date. And I think what we need to ask ourselves is, outside 26, how is it that we want to hold this country together if we don't allow the elections to go on the 26th? Are the parties that we are talking about, when I hear Professor and I hear Dr. Mukwana here, laying blame on all the parties. Here is, the Constitution talks about delegation of power to the executive, to parliament, to the judiciary, or the functions of the Constitution will be performed by all those, including the tribunals and the independent commissions. And we have the IEBC here, which we are making it very difficult for them to perform their work. Let me say this, the way I see it, and the way many see it, we've gotten to a point where, as you say, it is no longer an issue of the law. It is a question of, can we make sure that we have a country going forward? This is the country our parents fought for. And whatever it takes, the country must go on.
What is that thing that we need to do?
And one of the things that must happen on 26th, because I know what, or let me say this, because that is what I believe, the elections must take place on the 26th.
Regardless of all the questions.
The elections must take place on the 26th, because any other person trying to tell us that we cannot have elections is a person who wants us to get into a crisis, into chaos, so that I do not know how you benefit from it. We will deal with the rest after we have had elections on the 26th and we have a government in place that has been voted for by the people. What is what we cannot be able to take in is Professor here, and it's not him, I'm using him, I've known him for a long time, is Professor, to see Professor on a podium telling people, don't come out and vote. You can remain at home for all I care, but you don't stop me from voting. That is what the Constitution gives me, and that's what we fought for this country.
But
don't try to tell me not to come out and vote. It is criminal. I mean, you cannot understand how somebody would go and mobilize people. Don't come out and vote. It's criminal. It's the worst thing. In 1988, we were fighting against Mlolongo. These are people who would want a Mlolongo. I mean, you are denying me that which I only have as a Kenyan.
All right. But are you concerned about some of the issues raised and projected that need to be sorted out? And this is not just by a party, but also by the Supreme Court, that we need to have credible, verifiable elections, which the chairman now recently came out and made a statement he cannot guarantee. If things remain as they are, if we steamroll and say we're going for the elections, he cannot guarantee for free, fair, credible elections, which, by the way, works for all Kenyans, not for any party particularly.
How would he guarantee us a credible elections if a section of the political leaders is going around the country telling people, do not come out and vote? And on top of that, we will organize demonstration on the 26th, and we know demonstrations in this country have turned violent for the reasons that we can debate here until cows come home. How do you then, as a chairman, say that we are going to have credible elections when the actors want to disrupt the same elections that you are mandated by the Constitution and the Supreme Court to perform? Right. I mean, it is criminal, it's hypocritical, and there is no amount of reading this Constitution that will help us, because if people don't want us to move as a country together, we must make sure that we look at them in the eye and tell them as much.
All right. Dr. Mukhwana, you are a lawyer, and we do know what the law says. We have a Supreme Court ruling that it cuts both ways. The Supreme Court gave a ruling which said basically we go back to, we redo the elections, albeit with some conditions. And those conditions are within the Constitution. It's not conditions that the Supreme Court, you know, they're not new. They basically are enshrined in the Constitution. Now, here we are as a country with a dilemma. On the 26th is the gazetted date for the election. However, the chairman of the IEBC, who's meant to be independent, seems to be doubtful, if things remain as they are, as to whether we can have those credible elections. Do we steamroll and go for the elections on the 26th? Because again, we have another dilemma. If there are no elections on the 26th, we have an animal that we have no idea where the head is in terms of the Constitution is silent as to what happens if we do not have the Constitution within the 60 days.
Thank you, Michael. And this animal whose description you do not know will actually be there either before or after.
Or maybe we already even have that.
Correct. These are two evils. The difference is the evil that occurs before 26th and the evil that occurs after 26th. In my view, the one occurring after 26th will be unfathomable, because we shall have a government that has been elected, whose legitimacy is clearly questionable, and therefore whose acceptability by a section of this country will clearly not be there. Now, let me go back to what I've said a couple of times. I repeat it because Mheshimiwa here seems to have evoked my memories on that. You see, the biggest trouble we have in this country, Michael, with greatest respect to Mheshimiwa, are politicians. Because politicians believe in the end, not in the means. As long as they achieve the objective that they seek, the means does not matter. And let me explain how this is being done. Mheshimiwa is right, and I agree with him when he says we must have elections 26. And I've said it all along. I've been consistent on this one. We must have elections because the Constitution says so, and Article 140, under which the elections were annulled 60 days after the annulment. We must also have elections because that is what the Supreme Justice said. But I depart from him when he says everything else doesn't matter. I mean, we have grave issues regarding the process of the election. The justices said elections are not a one-day event. Elections are a process, pre and during. Pre-election, we talk of procurement ballot papers. We talk about the logistics. I mean, what answer does Mheshimiwa have for us, for example?
I'll give you the answer.
Before I finish.
In this Supreme Court ruling, and you can continue after this because I don't want to, let me say, in this Supreme Court ruling, where is it that I was supposed to do anything else other than the tribunal? All yourself. This Supreme Court judgment was directed to the parties, and the parties, IEBC, perform these elections. If you think there are things they are not doing because they are deliberately avoiding to do, go back to the Supreme Court. You are not told to go to the streets. You are going to the streets. It clearly says the message that you are not even interested with the Supreme Court judgment in the first place. You wanted to frustrate that process. And this way, for one simple objective, make sure that you dent the legitimacy of the government that will be in power on the 27th. And he has said it. So it doesn't matter what amount of time we give to IEBC, what reforms you undertake. These reforms, no elections, was the slogan in the 80s. It's back in the 90s. We now have it in the this millennium. It will be there in 2030, 2040. There's a slogan that I expect to get from that side of the divide going forward. There is no amount of reforms that will be undertaken. For as long as, what he has said, the politicians on their side are not able to achieve what they want, which is power. And now that we have established that, we must allow the country to move on. We will live with what comes on the 27th. The Constitution is there. If people want to continue demonstrating after the 27th, that again is granted in the Constitution, but the country must move on.
All right. Yes,
Michael, I'm a bit worried about the arguments that are in place right now on this show. One of the things that really worries me is what prevented the IEBC from going back to the Supreme Court to say, look, you directed me to carry out an election, but in my efforts to carry out the election according to the Constitution and applicable law, I have encountered the following challenges. All right? That's what I'm worried about. Why have they never really gone to court to ask for this? In other words, if they have encountered challenges, which clearly the chairman is saying they are, why has he not gone to court to ask the court for indulgence so that they can either give him extra time or direct him firmly that as far as we are concerned, that is your in-house. That is your in-house.
I want you to add and say, why hasn't NASA also gone to court and say, this judgment that you gave, IEBC is violating it? Because that is where we should take our game. Or Jubilee, why is it they have not gone to court to say, the way you are preparing for these elections, we don't like it. But you don't take it to the streets. You want to ruin the country. You are not helping this country. And what we fought for was a peaceful, we needed to move on as a country, not a country in shambles. The fact that you now want the country to be in shambles, I mean, it is not
my position, Mike, thank you, Mheshimiwa, for now, no party can direct another as to what to do to gain advantage in a contest. You know, this I think...
It's logical.
It's logical. You cannot direct the other party. If you want to be right, you must do it the way I'm telling you to do it. That is logically inconsistent. What I am saying is this. In fact, what Mheshimiwa said, you are also right. Why hasn't NASA gone to court to say, look, as far as we are concerned, we are not satisfied with the arrangements that you ordered to be put in place for a credible election to be held. Now, what is interesting in all this is the fact that everybody, both parties, seem to be running away from the fundamental question. The issue really is when IEBC has a problem, Jubilee should not be blaming NASA. Should be blaming IEBC, not NASA. To me, that is the hypocrisy.
And possibly we'll look at that, because the question then would be, is there interference? But IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati has accused the political class of interference with running of the Commission affairs. But in a strong warning message to Jubilee and NASA, Chebukati vowed to uphold the Constitution and that he will not bow to any pressure. Let's listen in.
I cannot continue to be pushed by majority commissioners to accept legal opinions that serve partisan interests and are not grounded in the Constitution and the law. In the least, I find this as intellectual dishonesty for which my professional training demands that I abhor. I would rather bow out with my name intact and my head lifted high than be part of a process where personal interests dwarf the interests of the nation.
All right, so following Wafula Chebukati's admission, the political interference, NASA leaders claim that State House has taken the commission hostage.
Comes from the water and tells you the crocodile is sick, you better believe it. Akombe ametoka amesema kuna shida IEBC. Leo Chebukati amesema kuna shida. Na sisi tunajua kuna commissioners waine, mwanamke mmoja na wanaume watatu ambao wanafanya kazi kutoka State House, ambao wanafanya kazi kutoka ofisi ya Ruto, ambao wanafanya kazi na Rafael Tuju, ambao wanafanya kazi na watu wa Jubilee. Hao hawawezi kusimamia uchaguzi. Hao hawawezi kusimamia uchaguzi. Na leo hii tunamwambia Uhuru na Ruto, if indeed you are popular, that is Canaan Express. If indeed Uhuru and Ruto you are popular, if indeed you got the votes you say you got, if indeed you can win a popular election, why are you afraid of reforming the IEBC?
For the last 2 months, we have continued to negotiate with the IEBC, but to no avail. Reason is because the IEBC has been taken hostage by Jubilee. By admission by Mr. Chebukati himself today, IEBC is run from State House.
Now, as NASA pushes for IEBC reforms, Jubilee leaders say they will hold no dialogue ahead of the polls. They say the only dialogue they know is at the ballot.
We want to respectfully put it to Mr. Chebukati that your role is that of the referee. You are not the mediator. As a referee, he cannot call the teams and ask them, okay guys, when do we conduct this election? What rules should we put in place? In other words, there's nothing to dialogue.
Wewe unelipwa na pesa ya serikali na ya wananchi, tumekupatia na imetengwa 12 billion ya kufanya uchaguzi. Wewe kazi yako sio kuingilia sisi wanasiasa, wewe panga uchaguzi. Si ni namna hiyo? IEBC ipange nini? Sisi tuende tuka campaign kwa wananchi wetu, tuombe kura, wananchi waamue. Kusema ya kwamba lazima tuongee na huyu na huyu, mimi na sina shida na IEBC, mimi naenda kuongea nini? Me have no problem. I am ready for the 26th to cast my ballot. Kwa hivyo mimi sitaki kuambiwa na mtu ati tuende tukaongee. Mimi kama kuna mtu naongea naye, mimi naongea na wananchi wa Kenya kwa sababu hawa ndio wenye kura.
All right, so that's what's been happening. Dr. Mukhwana, on one hand, we as a country gloat and are very proud of our constitution. On the other hand, we somehow are obeying part of it, but not others. Is IEBC under siege, as mentioned by Akombe? Or again, another problem we have as a country is the minute a statement is made, we tend to look at it, is this siding with this side or the other side?
Michael, long before Dr. Akombe resigned, on this show, I said that on paper, IEBC is independent. In practice, there's no such thing as the independence of IEBC for two reasons. One, the very appointment of the IEBC commissioners was based on political patronage. Whereas you may say that they were vetted, every of the commissioners who was appointed because he had support, either from Jubilee or from NASA. Number two, whereas politicians in their rallies are telling us, fanya kazi yako, you are independent. That is just what they say in public. But behind, they are actually dictating what IEBC is doing. I've said here before even Chebukati said the other day, that Chebukati looks a very frightened man. And he seems like he is not his own man. He's just waiting cage somewhere for an escape route. When Dr. Kombe resigned, what Dr. Kombe said, never mind that politicians now have descriptions for her until she resigned, now they have descriptions. She's a dual citizenship, so she's not loyal, and so forth. If this is a commissioner who is saying that we have problems in the IEBC, why would you not want to listen? Further, Chebukati has stood up and said, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I have a problem. And what is he saying? He's saying that politicians are not giving him space to operate. He's not saying it is NASA or Jubilee, but he's saying politicians. And on that basis, he's also saying that, look, if there are no fundamental changes in the construction of the secretariat, and he mentions about chief key staff, I'll not be able to deliver credible elections. Now, how else do you want this man to do it? For me, the moment Dr. Kombe resigned, it gave Chebukati some amount of courage. And if you listen to the way he spoke, that is a characteristic of Chebukati. He spoke very courageously. So he's just owning up to what some of us have believed, that indeed IEBC is not independent.
All right. Honorable Kioni, is IEBC independent in your opinion? And it obviously is a matter of concern when you have two senior officials, commissioners, the chair and Akombe, basically saying that things are not well.
In your opening remarks, you said one of the most reliable commissioners, and I said, wow. How is it that the others are not reliable? Why? At what point did we have crisis? Did we have crisis of commissioners reliable? But that is.
No, you said one.
That is what you chose to describe. But let me say, the IEBC is independent. Chebukati is a lawyer, and this constitution that belongs to Mokwana, I don't carry it around because when you want to mislead Kenyans, you open one article and read. This constitution gives independence to that commission. But, you know, history also, you cannot sit here and just forget that there is history. And that's why we are celebrating Mashujas today. For all the time I think I have been active, and even from the day I joined political activity, I have always had quarrels with EACK, IEBC, Koret, from the day of Mlorongo. And this commission that we have today is in office because ODM said the Isaac Hassan team was not independent. Throw them out. And they were thrown out. Let's put another team in place. We brought in even the religious sector to bring them in place. They are there now. And Mogwana seems to have some inside information. He says they are not independent. There is somebody who is controlling them. From where we see it. And I think one of the ways, what I can see myself and I can talk about it is, when I find you outside my gate and you want to go away with my gate, you want to ensure that I am not able to move out tomorrow, and you are threatening my family and the rest, then that I would say, threats are coming from that angle.
And you can quote who the threats are coming from.
Yes, certainly. If you are every day, and even see what happens in Kisumu. I mean, can you sit and allow yourself where men are pulling a woman and slapping the lady, and all that she is doing, trying to organize for an election, performing the duties that are here in this constitution? What else would you expect Chebukati to say? I mean, the resignation of Akobe, I don't want to speak about it. Our fathers, our mothers had the opportunity of running away during the fighting of its independence. They chose to stick. Even when things were thick, they still made it. Her going away, to me, I leave it for people to say it, but to me, it's really, it must have been the wrong choice from the beginning. IEBC, we must allow them to perform their functions as is stipulated in the Constitution. And when I think they are not doing it, we have the judiciary to go to and complain. The judiciary that led a judgment that we in Jubilee were up against, and we are even today unhappy about. This judgment was obtained when NASA petitioned. Let them go again and petition if they think there's something that IEBC is doing that they should not be doing. Right.
Okay.
Why then, why go to the country and disrupt the whole country? Why even threaten that there will not be an election on 26? And you want to tell us that you really are interested with the elections, or you are interested in the country, that there's something you even wanted to do for this country when you got power? I doubt.
All right. Professor, I'll ask you to hold your thought because I want us to release KTN home and also just take a short break. But we're going to start it off from right there again. Just to mention that you're welcome to participate in this conversation. It's now 5 minutes to 8. We want to release KTN home and wish you all a wonderful and great Mashujaa Day for those of you on KTN home. Those of us on KTN News, we continue with this conversation as we come to wrap up shortly. But for now, we take a short break. We'll be right back.